Okay, so today we're diving into some excerpts you sent us. And honestly, I'm really intrigued by this whole let them theory from Mel Robbins. It seems like something a lot of people could benefit from, just learning to protect their time and energy a bit better. We all could use a bit less stress these days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about focusing on what you can control, which at the end of the day is really just yourself and your own reactions.
Exactly. And the theory basically boils down to two main ideas that really work together. Let them and let me.
Right. So instead of getting all tangled up and trying to manage how everyone else thinks or acts, which is kind of a recipe for stress, frankly, this theory encourages us to just manage our response, our own energy.
And what's really cool is that Mel Robbins connects this whole idea back to a very specific event in her own life, her son's high school prom. I mean, anyone who's been through that or even just witnessed it knows it can be a bit of a pressure cooker.
Totally. And the book actually describes all the craziness surrounding her son Oakley's prom night, like down to the last-minute corsage drama, an unexpected downpour, and no dinner reservations for this massive group of teenagers. Can you imagine?
Oh, I can totally picture it. As a parent, your instinct is to jump in and fix it all, right?
Exactly. And Robbins admits that she was right there with the rest of the parents, stressing out, trying to magically find a restaurant that could accommodate everyone at the last minute. It's so easy to get caught up in that whirlwind.
Absolutely. But then she describes this incredible turning point, this moment where she just decides to, let them figure it out.
And that's really a powerful question we should all be asking ourselves, like, where are we investing our energy?
Yeah.
Because we only have so much of it to give.
Right. And it's so easy to waste that precious energy trying to control things that are ultimately out of our hands.
Totally. So Robbins talks about how she basically gave her son some money for tacos, sent him and his date off into the rainy night, and decided to just let them have their prom experience, whatever that ended up looking like.
And the immediate effect, she says, was this overwhelming sense of freedom.
Right, and she talks about this realization that by letting go of that need to orchestrate everyone else's evening and focusing on what she could control, which was, at that point, her own reaction, she found a sense of calm amidst all the chaos. And what's really interesting is that this shift actually improved her relationships. Like, it took a weight off of everyone involved.
So it's like letting go of that invisible string you're constantly pulling on, trying to make everyone else dance to your tune.
That's a great way to put it. And it goes back to that seesaw analogy that Robbins uses later in the book.
Oh, yeah, the seesaw. Tell me more about that.
So think about it this way. Every time we try to control someone else, their thoughts, their words, their actions, it's like we're putting all our energy into pulling down their side of the seesaw.
Which, in turn, just gives them more leverage, right? It's like we're giving our power away.
Exactly. And the let them piece of the equation is about consciously recognizing that you can't actually control what's happening in someone else's head, what comes out of their mouth, or the actions they ultimately choose to take. So instead of focusing on what you can't control, you shift your attention to what you can influence your own reaction. And that's where the second part of the equation comes in the let me.
Okay, so let them is about letting go of control, and then let me is about taking responsibility for yourself.
Exactly. It's about recognizing your own needs and desires and then taking action to meet those needs. You're basically shifting that center of gravity back to yourself.
Got it. So it's not just about accepting what others do. It's about actively taking charge of your own experience.
Right. And one of the examples the book gives is this situation where a woman finds out that a bunch of her friends went on a weekend trip without inviting her. I think we've all felt that sting at some point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like instantly you start overthinking, what did I do? Why wasn't I included? It's so easy to spiral.
Totally. And that first instinct, Robin says, was to try and fix it, to reach out, smooth things over, soothe that anxiety of feeling left out.
It's almost like we think we can control other people's decisions by managing our own reaction.
Yeah. And in this case, you realize, like, wait a minute, they have every right to spend their time however they choose. So she decided to let them have their fun weekend, and instead she turned her attention inward.
That's where the let me comes in.
Exactly. It's about asking, what do I want? What do I need? Instead of dwelling on why she wasn't invited, she started thinking about her own desire for connection, her own role in nurturing her friendships.
So instead of let me figure out why they didn't invite me, it's let me think about how I can build stronger connections moving forward. It's a completely different energy.
Totally. And it's much more empowering.
Okay, so that's how it works on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
But what about those little everyday annoyances that wear us down? I mean, the book talks about how we can apply this to those little things too.
Yeah. Absolutely. This theory can be a really practical tool for managing those everyday stressors that just pop up all the time. Like, take the classic example of being stuck in a ridiculously slow checkout line. It's so easy to get annoyed and impatient, like your time is being wasted.
Right, like, come on, people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But by consciously choosing to let them, let the line move at its own pace, accept that this is just the reality of the situation right now. You're essentially protecting your own mental space.
It's like building a little shield around your own energy.
Yeah.
Right. You're not letting some external uncontrollable factor dictate your internal state.
Precisely.
And the book actually brings in the science behind this, explaining how our bodies react to stress on a neurological level. It's not just a mindset thing. It's actually affecting our physiology.
Right. So there's this thing called the stress response. And basically, when we feel stressed, our bodies go into a sort of survival mode. And as Dr. Aditi Nerurkar explains, in that state, our ability to be patient and remain calm kind of goes out the window.
Makes sense. It's like our brains are wired to react to perceived threats.
Exactly. And that's where those let me strategies become really important. Things like deep breathing, for instance, can actually help regulate our stress response.
Really? Tell me more about that.
So deep breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, which is this communication pathway between our brain and our body. And when we're stressed, that communication can get disrupted. But by consciously engaging in things like deep breathing, we can actually activate the vagus nerve and send a signal to our body to calm down. It's like hitting a reset button.
So it's like consciously taking back control of our internal state.
Exactly.
And there's that other example in the book that I found so relatable about the passenger on a plane who just won't stop coughing.
Oh, yeah. It's like the worst. Right. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it, but it can trigger so much anxiety.
Totally. But instead of focusing on the coughing, which is, again, completely outside your control, the book suggests shifting your focus to what you can control.
Yeah.
Your response.
Right. You can't make them stop coughing, but you can put on a mask, be mindful of your personal space, focus on what you need to do to take care of yourself in that situation.
Okay, so we've covered relationships, everyday annoyances, even plane etiquette. But what about work and ambition? Like, how does let them play out in the professional realm where things can get pretty frustrating?
Yeah, careers are definitely a big one. So the book gives the example of someone who's been passed over for a promotion, which is a pretty common experience. And it's so easy to get stuck in that cycle of resentment and blame. But the let them piece there is about acknowledging that, like, look, you can't force someone to give you a promotion.
So instead of trying to control your boss's decision, you focus on what you can do.
Right. And that's where the let me comes in. It's about actively exploring other opportunities, updating your resume, networking, maybe even looking for a different role where your contributions will be recognized and appreciated.
It's about taking ownership of your own career trajectory.
Exactly. And the book makes this really important point that often that feeling of being stuck is something we create for ourselves.
It's a story we tell ourselves.
Exactly. You almost always have more options than you realize.
Okay, so let them isn't about passively accepting everything in life.
Yeah.
There are times when taking action is necessary, right? Mm-hmm. And the book addresses this with a pretty down-to-earth example.
Yeah, like the dog owner who doesn't pick up after their pet in the park. So maybe initially you let them get away with it for those minor, inconsequential things. But when it starts impacting a shared space, when it goes against your values, that's when you can choose to step in.
And the book calls this your threshold, like evaluating the situation and deciding if inaction is really the best course.
Right. And they even touch on this briefly in the context of politics, like letting others have their own opinions, even if you disagree strongly. Because trying to control someone's political beliefs, that's a recipe for stress and conflict, if I've ever heard one.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about something that I think holds a lot of us back. The fear of what other people think. This is something the book dedicates a lot of time to unpacking.
Yeah, it's a huge stumbling block. And Robbins actually shares a really personal story about how she delayed promoting her speaking career on social media for 2 whole years because she was afraid of what her friends and family would think.
2 years. That's a long time to let fear dictate your actions.
Yeah, and she talks about the anxiety surrounding this shift, going from personal updates to professional promotion. And she worried about being judged, perceived differently by those who knew her well.
So she was letting their potential judgments control her choices.
Right. And she describes all the energy she wasted crafting these perfectly curated posts, constantly self-monitoring, worrying about likes and comments. It was exhausting.
And how did the let them principle help her overcome that?
It was about recognizing that ultimately you can't control what goes on inside someone else's head. You can't control what other people think. And once she truly internalized that, she describes this incredible sense of liberation.
It's like she was finally free to be herself, to pursue her passions without that constant fear of judgment hanging over her.
Exactly.
But let them doesn't mean we just become completely insensitive to others' feelings, right? There has to be a balance.
Of course. It's not about being inconsiderate or turning into a bulldozer. It's more about learning to honor your own needs and values while navigating the needs and emotions of those around you.
And the example the book gives about the busy weekend with a friend's birthday party and a visit to the grandparents, I thought that was really helpful for illustrating that balance.
Yeah, it's a great example of how you can make an effort to be present for the people you care about, but also set boundaries based on your own energy and needs.
Right. So maybe you go to the birthday party, but you leave a little earlier than everyone else. And the point is, you're making that choice based on what feels right for you, not just to please everyone else.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, you're always going to have someone who has a different opinion about how you should be living your life.
The key is to not let that someone be yourself.
Well said.
Family relationships, though, I feel like those can be particularly tricky, especially when it comes to navigating their opinions and expectations.
Yeah, family dynamics are a whole other level. And the book talks about how family members often feel really entitled to their opinions because in their minds, they know what's best for you.
Which, of course, usually aligns with what makes them most comfortable.
Right. And because family is a system, any change you make, even a positive one, can create a ripple effect throughout the whole dynamic.
And the book specifically addresses the challenges of step-parenting. I mean, talk about a tricky dynamic.
Yeah. Blending families definitely adds another layer of complexity. And the advice for step-parents, you have to let them, meaning the stepchildren, grieve the loss of their original family unit. You have to let them see you as a potential threat, even if you have the best intentions.
Because, let's be real, you are a disruptor to their world, whether you want to be or not.
Exactly. And the let me part for the step-parent in this case is huge. It's about operating from a place of understanding, patience, grace, and compassion. Because the reality is, those kids are going through a lot, and you can't control their feelings or force them to accept you.
It's about being the grown-up in the situation.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about understanding our own perspective, but the book also emphasizes the importance of understanding others' perspectives, their frame of reference, as Lisa Bilyeu calls it. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, and this is a really crucial concept. It's about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, trying to understand their perspective based on their own unique life experiences and beliefs. And the book uses a great example, the author's story about her mother's disapproval of her marriage.
Oh, yeah, because her mother didn't want her to move so far away.
Right. And initially there was this clash between the author feeling like she didn't have her mother's support and her mother feeling like she was losing her daughter. But then she had this realization about her mother's frame of reference. She realized that her mother's fear was actually coming from a place of love.
So it wasn't about one person being right and the other being wrong. It was about understanding the emotions driving each other's perspectives.
Exactly. And once she understood that, it completely shifted the dynamic, and they were able to connect on a deeper level.
It's like suddenly you're seeing the world through their eyes, and it all starts to make more sense.
Exactly.
So, with all of this, it seems like the real takeaway is this. We can't control what other people think or do, but we can absolutely control our own responses.
Right. And recognizing that simple truth is incredibly empowering.
It's like taking back the reins of your own life.
Exactly. You get to decide how you're going to react regardless of what's happening around you.
Now, what about those times when we're dealing with people who are, well, emotionally immature? The book mentions this idea of adult childlike behavior. What's that all about?
Yeah, and the book gives some good examples, like the silent treatment, for instance. It's essentially when adults react to situations in a way that you might expect from a child, tantrums, blame shifting, shutting down completely. And the book points out that this usually stems from an inability to process difficult emotions in a healthy way. It's not your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix it.
So the let them principle applies to their emotional immaturity as well.
Absolutely. Let them have their reaction without feeling like you need to manage it or take it personally.
And the let me part is about staying aware of your own tendencies. Like, do you also react in emotionally immature ways sometimes? And if so, how can you manage those reactions better?
Right. And the book reminds us that emotions are contagious, and things like hunger, tiredness, and stress can make us all a bit more reactive than usual.
Makes sense. We've all been there. Hangry, anyone.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And the book also talks about the fact that sometimes doing what's right for you might upset other people, which is a tough reality to face.
Right. And they use the example of a groom considering calling off his wedding, even though it would obviously disappoint a lot of people. But sometimes you have to prioritize your own happiness, even if it means letting others down.
Tough call, but sometimes necessary.
Exactly. And it's not always easy.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, I want to talk about comparison, this constant comparing ourselves to others, which is something we all do, especially in the age of social media.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. And the book really calls us out on this. It's like, okay, we all compare ourselves to others sometimes. It's natural. But when we get obsessed with it, when we fixate on those aspects of other people's lives that we perceive as better than our own, it's just a recipe for unhappiness.
It's like self-torture.
Exactly. And the example in the book about the daughter comparing herself to her sister, that was a really good illustration. Because no matter how much reassurance she got, it didn't change the fact that she was choosing to focus on what she perceived as her sister's better qualities, and it was making her miserable.
So how do we apply let them to that kind of situation?
It's about letting them have their achievements, their circumstances, whatever it is that we're comparing ourselves to. Because the reality is their life isn't our life. We're on different paths.
It's like we're all playing different card games, and it makes no sense to compare our hand to someone else's hand.
Exactly. We need to focus on playing our own hand to the best of our ability. And the book also mentions the potential dangers of unchecked comparison, how it can contribute to things like eating disorders and other mental health issues. It's serious stuff.
For sure. But can comparison ever be a positive thing?
It actually can be. Instead of letting it drag us down, we can choose to see other people's successes as a source of inspiration.
So instead of they have something I don't, it's if they can do it, maybe I can too.
Exactly. Let them lead the way, as the book puts it. And there's this great story about Molly, who wants to be an interior designer. She was super annoyed by her neighbor, who seemed to have this effortlessly stylish home, and she felt a lot of jealousy. But then she made a conscious decision to flip that jealousy into inspiration.
And that shift made all the difference.
Right. Suddenly, instead of being a source of frustration, her neighbor's success became a roadmap.
Love that. Now let's talk about friendships. I mean, adult friendships can be tough. People move, lives change, and it's easy to feel like you're losing touch with your friends.
Yeah, for sure. And the book actually talks about this phenomenon called the Great Scattering. It's basically this natural shift from the very central group-oriented friendships we have in our youth to a more individualized experience in adulthood.
Which makes total sense when you think about it. People get married, have kids, start careers, move to different cities.
Exactly. And the book talks about how 3 key factors play into sustaining adult friendships: proximity, timing, and available energy.
And all of those things tend to change as we get older.
Right. So some friendships naturally evolve and some sadly fade away. And the let them piece here is about observing those shifts without taking them personally, recognizing that this is just part of life.
And recognizing that people change, priorities shift, and that's okay.
Exactly.
So if let them is about accepting the natural ebb and flow of friendships, how do we actively cultivate new, meaningful connections as adults? What's the let me part of building friendships?
The let me is all about being proactive and taking initiative, putting yourself out there. And the book actually offers a really helpful guideline, the give it a year principle.
What's that?
Basically, it's about giving new connections a reasonable amount of time to develop. Because building solid friendships takes time and effort. But the most important thing is going first.
Yeah.
Making that first move, introducing yourself to people, being willing to put yourself out there, even if it feels a little awkward.
Because the reality is most people are just as hesitant to make the first move as you are.
Exactly. And even those small, seemingly insignificant interactions, they can really add up over time. They build that sense of belonging, that feeling that you're not alone in this whole adulting thing.
And even as we're putting ourselves out there, let them. Still applies, right?
Oh, absolutely. You have to let them have their own lives, their own schedules, their own ways of engaging in a friendship. Like, don't take it personally if someone doesn't call you back right away or needs to reschedule plans.
It's about being understanding.
Exactly. And the let me for you is about making an effort without having rigid expectations, trusting that, real, genuine friendships will develop organically over time.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common to want the people we care about to, make positive changes in their lives, to eat healthier, exercise more, that sort of thing. But how do we encourage those changes without being pushy or controlling?
Right, that's the million-dollar question. And the book makes it very clear. Trying to force someone to change is a recipe for disaster. The harder you push, the more resistance you're likely to encounter.
It's like that classic saying, you can lead a horse to water.
Exactly. And the book gives the example of this woman who's constantly nagging her husband to eat better and exercise. It just creates this cycle of tension and resentment.
So instead of nagging, we need to let them make their own choices. But does that mean we're completely powerless to influence them?
Not at all. While we can't force someone to change, we can definitely influence them. And one of the most effective ways to do that, the book suggests, is by modeling the desired behavior ourselves.
Leading by example.
Exactly. So, for instance, if you want your partner to exercise more, start exercising yourself. You'd be surprised how powerful that can be. And the book also introduces this communication tool called the ABC loop as a way to potentially facilitate change.
Okay, tell me about this ABC loop. What does it stand for?
So it stands for acknowledge and ask open-ended questions, back off and observe behavior, and celebrate progress while modeling change.
A lot to unpack there.
Right. So starting with open-ended questions, that's about encouraging the other person to reflect on their own desires and behaviors. Instead of telling them what to do, you're getting them to think about it for themselves.
So instead of you need to start exercising, it's have you thought about incorporating more movement into your day?
Exactly. And then backing off and observing their behavior, that's about giving them space to make their own choices.
You're not hovering, you're not micromanaging.
Right. And then finally, celebrating progress, even the small wins, and continuing to model that desired behavior yourself. It's about positive reinforcement and showing them, not just telling them what healthy change looks like.
So it's a more subtle and supportive approach than just telling someone what to do. Now, what about those really challenging situations where a loved one is struggling with something serious, like addiction or mental health issues? How does let them apply in those cases?
Yeah, these are incredibly tough situations, and the book offers this really difficult truth. You can't force someone to get better, and not everyone is ready or able to get better at any given time. And sometimes our well-intentioned attempts to rescue someone can actually hinder their ability to find their own strength.
It's like we're enabling their behavior rather than helping them.
Exactly. And the book uses the example of this young woman with anxiety who keeps ending up back at her parents' house, sleeping on their floor. And it's heartbreaking, but the parents' attempts to shield her from discomfort are actually preventing her from developing coping mechanisms and learning to manage her anxiety.
So sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step back and allow them to face the consequences of their choices.
Right. It's about distinguishing between support and enabling. And that's not always easy, especially when you're dealing with someone you love dearly. But setting those boundaries, allowing for natural consequences to unfold that, can be the catalyst for real change.
And even though it's hard, sometimes that's the most loving thing you can do.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about dating. The book applies the let them theory to romantic relationships as well, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and dating in the modern world, let's be honest, it can be a minefield. Ghosting, breadcrumbing, the whole thing can be pretty brutal. But the book stresses the importance of being authentically yourself, that's the let me in this context, and being really discerning when it comes to who you choose to spend your time and energy on.
So don't make excuses for bad behavior.
Right. If someone's not treating you the way you deserve to be treated, let them, let their actions speak for themselves. You deserve someone who's genuinely interested in you and who wants to put in the effort to build a relationship.
And what about those people who just can't seem to commit?
Again, let them. If they're not ready to commit, you can't force them. And honestly, why would you want to? You're worth more than that.
Totally agree.
And the ABC loop, the book says, can be helpful in romantic relationships too. It can help you figure out if someone is genuinely interested in making changes or if they're just stringing you along.
Good to know. And the book also points out that even if someone is committed, that doesn't necessarily mean you're compatible long term.
Right. Commitment and compatibility are two different things.
And sometimes those fundamental differences, those incompatibilities, they're just deal breakers.
Exactly. Like if one person wants to move to London and the other is dead set on staying in the U.S., that's a pretty significant hurdle to overcome.
For sure.
And the book encourages us to ask ourselves, Will I ultimately regret compromising on this more than I would regret ending the relationship? Because sometimes ending a relationship, even if it's painful, is the best choice for both people in the long run.
Tough but true.
Yeah.
And for those who are going through heartbreak, the book offers a lot of support and practical advice.
Yeah, heartbreak is really rough, and the book doesn't sugarcoat it. But it also provides a lot of really helpful research-based tools for getting through it. Things like implementing a strict no contact rule for at least 30 days, making an effort to refresh your environment, reaching out to your support network, and focusing on filling your life with positive activities.
So it's about being really intentional about your healing process.
Exactly.
It's not about just loving yourself, which, as the book points out, is much easier said than done when you're in the throes of heartbreak.
Right. It's about taking concrete actions to care for yourself.
And at the end of the day, the book emphasizes the importance of applying these principles, the let them and the let me, to the most important relationship of all, the one we have with ourselves.
Absolutely. It's about treating yourself with the same compassion and respect that you would offer to someone you love dearly, establishing boundaries, pursuing your dreams, and allowing yourself to just be without the need for constant external validation.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the let them theory, it seems like the overall message is really about reclaiming our personal power.
It is, and the book uses this great analogy of the sky, how the weather is constantly changing and there's nothing we can do to control it, but we can choose how we react to the weather.
We can choose our own internal climate.
Exactly, and that's a really powerful realization.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this material. It's been really insightful. And to you, our listener, thank you for sending us these excerpts. We hope this deep dive has been helpful and maybe even sparked some new ideas for you.
It was my pleasure.
As you go about your day, maybe consider this. What's one area in your life where you can consciously apply the let them principle? What would it look like to just let go of that need to control something that's ultimately outside of your control? And what would it feel like to shift that focus inward to that let me space? It's something to ponder, and hopefully it will lead to a little more peace and a lot more personal power in your life. See you on our next deep dive. Until then, take good care.